All right, hello, welcome, good evening. How is everybody doing tonight? Hello and welcome to Table Talk, our Knights of Last Call live stream, where we kind of have a topic of the day. And I reached out to the heroes and the champions of our stream, and I asked them what would they like to see. And they said, well, you know, we had some good ideas, but a general GM Q&A was sort of the winner. How is everybody doing? I see a bunch of people in chat. We were kind of talking before we got started, so that's pretty cool. Oh boy. So, exciting stuff. We've got Mr. Ben here. Yeah, Ben was giving me crap for cutting it close. See, we told it, we're here. We've got Mr. Stephen Palmer here. Welcome, Stephen. Glad to see you here as well. Mr. Damian Williams as well. Hello and welcome, sir. Awesome to see you as well. Morning to you, Foire. And Lance is still complaining about the parts of the tables that I still have in his garage, which to be fair is reasonable. It is reasonable. Nightish says, thanks for recommending Root. Got my first session on Friday. That's awesome. I'm really excited. I'd love to hear how it went and, talk about what you liked, what you didn't like. I have my thoughts. I obviously am getting ready to run the game. I've run many PBTA games, so happy to answer any questions in that and, to that nature. Hey, Rick Sherman's here, hero in the house. Welcome, Rick Sherman. I think our one of our newest heroes. To Knights of Last Call. We had a couple folks upgrade to hero, but Rick is brand new, so welcome, Rick. Glad to see you. Awesome to see you here. Damien says he took a break from game designing for the stream. Well, awesome. That's great. Yes, we do need that. Speaking of people who upgraded to hero, there is Mr. Boothby himself. Pillsbury coming out here with a question. So let me, real quick, kind of give you an overview of what we're doing here tonight. It's Q&A. Now, I will happily answer questions about Pathfinder, but I'm also very keen to answer to questions about any other games or just general gaming, life advice. If you have any questions about sailing or woodworking, data science, I'm happy to answer those as well. Typically, I ask that if you are going to ask a question, that you do so by typing in question, capital letters with a colon, and then ask your question. It just makes it easier for me to find it. I'm actually working on making a bot that can do a better job of keeping our questions queued up. They have some for Stream Elements, but they only work for Twitch. Nothing really works for YouTube, so I am working on a Python bot to do that for me. Secondly, we are just a few patrons away from 200 active patrons. So I am going to be asking you tonight, if you are here and you are enjoying the stream and you are not already a patron member, if you're watching this VOD tomorrow or the next day, and you've really enjoyed the Knights of Last Call and you enjoyed conversations backs and forth like this, and you want to be a part of that conversation, basically 24/7, I really highly encourage you to sign up for our Patreon. It's patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. The link is in the description below. And there's several tiers. If you want to just dip your toe in, there's a $3 level that only gets you into the Discord. But, it's kind of a great way to take a look. If you want to get more ideas about what's really available with extra bonus videos, extra bonus content, extra bonus chats and live streams, you're going to want to go for the Knight level. And if you want access to our upcoming PDFs and other digital documents, you want to be a champion or higher. And if you really want to show your support and you want to go all the way, and you maybe even want to join me here on the live stream, then you're going to want to go to the full hero tier. So again, I just personal goal for myself way back when we started this Patreon back in last July. That's right, the Patreon is now a year old. I set this very, very auspicious goal of 200 people by July. And we have had 200 people come in and go. But, we've had 30 or so, 40 people who've left the Patreon. So currently, actively, I think we're at like 194, 195. So I'm not going to shill too much more, but definitely encourage that. So if you have a question, put it with questions. I see people are doing that already. I will try to work through them. If I miss your question, I'm really sorry. That's why I'm working on a bot to work up a queue. But if you do want to get your question answered and get top priority and go to the top of the list, throw it in a super chat, throw it in a tip. You can type !tip in the chat, or there's a description there's a link in the description below to our Stream Elements tip page, and that is going to get you to the top of the list.
Jason B. tipped $10. Totally join the Patreon. It is worth it. I learned so much about the game there. And then I was able to join community games and the Colk Mega game and got to play PF2. Crazy how this game actually works.
Thank you, Jason B, for that $10 tips. Yeah, Jason B may or may not be the lead designer for Pathfinder 2, but we'll never know. But he is discussing the fact that in addition to talking about games, we play a lot of games on our Discord. We use it as a hub for a variety of games. Yes, there's a lot of Pathfinder 2 games, including our Northern Reaches games, but our patrons run a ton of non-Pathfinder 2 games. I'm talking weird indie shit. I'm talking Call of Cthulhu. I'm talking Forbidden Lands. I'm talking Powered by the Apocalypse. I'm talking 7th Sea. So if you're interested in Pathfinder 2, you should join the Discord. But if you're interested in more than Pathfinder 2, if you really want to explore a lot of these other games that are behind me, the ones that I'm always talking about, I also encourage you to join the group. And if you are a knight, you can get into all of these games for free, basically. I mean, other than the money that you pay to be into the Patreon. But it's pretty awesome. And we've got really great GMs there. GMs I really respect. Some GMs that have changed the way that I run my games, the way that I think about games, because of how amazing and good they are. So it's very much a collaborative space. And I have benefited greatly from being there and running it. So even though it is technically my community, I view myself as being a member of it just as much as I am the guy in charge, I guess. But yeah, so we'll get underway. So our first question from Pillsbury was, what do you keep behind your GM screen in a PBTA game? Well, that's a great question, Pillsbury. First things first. I usually don't have a GM screen when I run Powered by the Apocalypse games.
Ben tipped $15.
Oh, we got a tip from Ben.
Question. Would love to hear you discuss safety protocols and keeping things moving for a convention or pickup game or one shot. All
right, great. That's a great question, Ben. I will go and answer that as soon as I finish up here with Pillsbury. But thank you very much for that tip. That's very nice. Yeah. So, what do I keep behind my GM screen in a PBTA game? Usually, very little, nothing. I don't even have dice in a PBTA game, so there's not a whole lot that I need. I sometimes have a couple of printouts that might have the moves, just to remind myself of what the moves do and what the options are. When it comes to things like fronts or clocks, I usually have those pretty public. I try not to over prepare. A lot of times, if there are important NPCs or important ideas, they're already written on a note card, and it's already been sort of placed out onto the table. There's very little information that I feel I need to keep hidden. Worst case scenario, I might have a notebook that I might keep some notes in, but I'm not really trying to hide it. And since I don't need dice, and I don't even roll dice, I don't even need a screen. Now, Root has a GM screen, but that really just, it's very small. It's only like maybe the height of a pop can and a soda can, and it really just has the moves. It's just, for me, it's just an easy way to just quickly access the moves. So I think it's more for visual aesthetic than anything. So the long and the short of it is nothing, because I don't use a GM screen when I play a PBTA game. So let me get to Ben's question real quick. And again, I'm going to repeat the question here. Would love to hear you discuss safety protocols and keeping things moving for a convention or pickup game or one shot. So great question. So let's kind of break this down into a couple pieces. Let's talk about safety protocols. Well, okay, first things first. In my convention bag, this has gotten a lot better nowadays, by the way, because convention organizers are much more aware of this. But I always have a laminated name tents, right? So this is basically a piece of paper folded into a triangle, and I have it laminated, and then there's like a slit on the top and the bottom so that you can interweave them so that it makes a little name placard. And I have people write. I always have dry erase markers with me, when I go to a convention, and I pass them out. And on my placard, or on my name placard, I have a place where you can put your character's name, and then I have a spot, because again, I play a lot of wonky games. I have a spot inside that name placard where you could put your character's gender. And then in the upper right-hand corner, smaller, I have a spot where you could put your name and your gender as well. And I do this because things can get kind of, you're meeting people for the first time. And, especially if you're playing maybe a little bit more of an explorative game, you might be playing as a person of a different gender than you. And you want to make sure that you're using the appropriate pronouns and that you're giving people respect. So I always try to make sure that everybody at least understands, that, and tries to understand that basis. Second, the X card. Now, this gets talked about a lot. I was introduced to this a long time ago. Now, when I was introduced to the X card, it was double-sided. It was a big, like 5x7 index card. Maybe you have two of them on the board, on the table, with a big red X on it. And then I used to have the other side of it be like a green check mark in a green circle, which was sort of a way of the table saying, like, give me more of this. Keep going. I think, for me, it's not just about setting limits. It's also about encouraging. And I think that, and I've seen different variations of that. The X card is all that really kind of caught on, I think, because generally speaking, it's easier to control people than it is to encourage them. You don't want people to go too far. But yeah, so generally speaking, I think the X card is the single greatest thing, especially when you're playing with strangers. And I wouldn't even do it now to the point where everybody, there's just one. I might have one in front of each character, in front of each player position. And if at any point in time, and I very explicitly explain this. All right, everyone, in front of you is an index card with a big red X on it. If at any point during this course of the game, we start going into a subject material, or we start going into an area that makes you uncomfortable, if someone is saying something that makes you uncomfortable, feel free to tap this X card. It's going to be my job, but it's also going to be all of your jobs to be paying attention and looking for this. If you see it, we will just take a step back and we will reassess what we're doing. You don't need to explain yourself. At no point will I ask you to demonstrably explain to me why that was offensive to you, yes or no. We will simply make sure that we understand what the offensive content was. We'll make a note of it. We'll say thank you for sharing with us that made you uncomfortable. Recognize that that's a hard thing to do, and we move on because it's an RPG, and we just move on. Have I ever used the X card? No. Have other people used the X card on me? Yes. Have other people used the X card on me? Yes. And has X card been used at my table and I have, cut someone off? Yes. Has anyone ever complained? Like once, maybe in like 12 years of playing hundreds of different indie games with it. I think it's the safest, easiest, best way to do it. And Nightish, says, I hear a lot about lines and veils, but that's hard to get established in a pickup game. Yeah, I agree. Coming up with a palette in a pickup game is a little tough. I think you could do a good job if it's a pickup game at a convention to have a list of understanding expectations going into this game. Maybe that's on the description. Maybe that's the person who's running the event. As you as the GM, I think benefits greatly from handing out a little card before your game starts to say, hey, this is what my game is going to include. This is what my game is going to be about. I think that basically a content warning for your game. Like if I'm going to run a Call of Cthulhu game, which I'm not, but if I was going to run a Call of Cthulhu game that was going to feature some sort of body horror, now that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't, get into the nitty gritty of it and then have someone say that's a little too gross for me. But if like the idea of body horror at all is completely anathema to you, then maybe you picked the wrong game, right? The person, the individual needs to bear some amount of responsibility for this as well. So while I really do like palettes and I do like lines and veils, I think that those are too difficult to sort of establish at a pickup game. And so I think ultimately you're better off just going with the X card and making sure people tap it. Now, that being said, I also love to have my X card have the other side of it, a green circle with a check mark into it. I like for my players to encourage people. And I don't want them to be interrupting somebody. But if you see a player and they're trying to get somewhere with an idea or a description, you might, it's difficult to break them up, but you can encourage them. Like someone's going somewhere and they're like, okay, well maybe and you kind of push that green circle out and you tap it, right? Everybody's paying attention because they're looking for that X warning. But when that person sees that you are basically kind of giving them the thumbs up by saying, yeah, keep going. I like where you're going with this. This is cool. I appreciate what you're doing. That's a very positive thing as well. So it's not just about, safety. I think it's also about encouraging and promoting companionship and brotherhood and sisterhood amongst your group. And in the very best convention pickup games that I've had, and I'm not going to lie, this usually does not happen when I play D&D. It usually happens with your more independent role-playing games. I've had it a ton of times with Powered by the Apocalypse type games, where the people like join together, and they become almost this little crew. I've seen like friendships form out of these games because people feel banded together and they feel very collaborative, and I think it's really very strong. So second part of Ben's question, and Ben gets a long answer because Ben tipped. So yes, capitalism rules here. Nice last call. So Ben also asked about keeping things moving for a pickup game or a convention game. Yeah. You have an objective that you need to ideally tell a complete story, or at least resolve some sort of complete idea in your allotted time, whether that's a 2-hour or 4-hour slot. I think you need to be, I think this is true for home games too. I think all GMs need to be better editors. I think you need to be willing and able to step in and give the people direction, give the people an idea, give the people some sense of where they're wanting to go. I mean, I hate to say it, but this is one of the reasons why I love playing Blades in the Dark, especially at convention games, because Blades in the Dark, so many of their mechanics are designed to sort of bypass a lot of the we don't know what to do, or we have no idea what's going on, or let's plan for 45 minutes before. By the way, we're not thieves and we're not military experts, but we are sitting here. And by the way, we're also definitely not thieves or military experts in a medieval simulation game that's also got dragons and magic. And so what are we even doing here? And I do appreciate that games that say, hey, you know what? Blaze in the Dark says, you don't get to plan, okay? You tell me what you're doing. We're breaking into the guy's house. Okay, great. Roll a die. We'll see how good your plan is, and then we'll go from there. And that to me is very appealing, because the planning part, you know, maybe that's fun in your home game where you're playing once a week. But I think at a convention game, you need to really push the pace. And I think the GM bears the responsibility for that, a big time. And I think keeping things public and keeping things aware of what's going on and being very honest and forthright with your players, pointing out the time and discussing things. And I think getting to a satisfying conclusion point is the most important thing in a convention game. I'm not trying to say that you should fudge. I'm simply just saying I think it is on the GM's shoulders to make a clear editorial decision to say, all right, I think we've heard enough decisions. So it sounds like the options are A or B, and let's pick one and move forward. You know, and when all else fails, I don't know, orcs kick in the door and start attacking everybody, and it turns into a ferocious melee, and maybe you don't get anything done, but at least people will remember it. So yeah, convention gaming can be a lot of fun. It's also a really great way to improve your GMing skills, because you don't have like this in-based knowledge of, hey, I've been playing with this person for 10 years. I know exactly what they want. Like you really need to learn how to read people and do things better. So yeah, awesome. Great question. Thanks, Ben. All right. Damien asked the question, how you doing? Great, actually. I've been working on a pretty big project for my day job for the last couple of months. A series of automations and reporting automations, and this week I finished it up. So I also had a presentation yesterday about data science in front of my company, and it went very well, as you might expect. Presenting is not a problem for me, but it was nice to get it off of my plate nonetheless. So two really big things are off of my plate, which is great. And then, of course, next week should have been Gen Con, so I am on vacation. But because Gen Con fell through, because we could not get a hotel, I am instead going back to Vegas. That's right. A buddy of mine had made plans to go to Vegas that week, and I was bummed anyways, because I was like, I love going to Vegas with this guy. But you know, wasn't gonna go because I had Gen Con. I have my badge in the other room ready to go. But since we were unable to secure a hotel room, I bought a flight, and I'm going to Vegas, basically on the cheap. So next week is going to be pretty freaking awesome. Yeah, so looking forward to that. Joe Castle asks, question, prior to Quest for the Frozen Flame, have you ever run a themed campaign like an Egyptian or Greek setting? Joe, no, I haven't. And it's funny, we were just talking about this the other day, Joe. I don't know how long you've been playing games, but we were talking about the old 2nd edition green cover books the other day. And these were the books for 2nd edition that were sourced into, there was like a book about Celts and a book about Roman and a book about Greeks. And as a kid, you know, being a teenager in the 90s, I thought these books were so lame. I had no interest in playing them at all. Okay, Joe says he's been playing since 1988. Okay, so you remember the green cover 2nd edition books. But as an adult, I think it's so much more interesting. And, you know, Magic the Gathering did a couple of real world inspired fantasy themed worlds, like they did Theros, which was Greek themed, and then they eventually made it into a D&D supplement, Mythic Odyssey of Theros, I think it's called. And then they also did a Egyptian themed set called Amonkhet. And these were both real world settings, but, you know, transitioned into this fictional world of Magic the Gathering and now D&D. And I think they work really, really well. There is this idea that Mark Rosewater, who is one of the lead designers, and this is sort of a broader question, Joe, which you didn't really, you you didn't really ask, but I do want to kind of touch on this point. Steven says blue covers were still the best, but green covers were underrated. Absolutely, blue covers were the best. Red cover splat was just, you know, the beginning of the beginning of the world of splats and kits. So red cover books, there was just too many of them. Blue cover books were the bomb, and the green cover books were underrated. So that is 100% correct there, Steven. That is exactly how I feel about it. So going back to the question about themed campaigns, Mark Rosewater, the lead designer for Magic the Gathering, and has been for so many years, talks about something that he calls resonance in game design. And this doesn't mean like resonance the way we think it means in Pathfinder 2. Resonance is this idea that whether you understand it or not, the hardest part about any game and any game design, and anytime you sit down to play Pathfinder 2, or anytime you sit down to play D&D, or anytime you sit down to play Call of Cthulhu, the hardest thing is that your players are real people in the real world, and they are playing or role-playing as these characters who exist in a world of fantasy or monsters or magic, and they should just know things. They should just know how things work in their world, the way that we just know how things work in our world. But we don't. And there's this kind of like fish out of water thing that can happen when your PC should 100% know how things work in their world. But you, the player playing them, don't know this. And, you know, sometimes you get, GMs who will give this overly lengthy first session or session 0, just campaign synopsis where they're trying to explain to you every single cultural touchstone and milestone of this campaign. And that just never works out well. And you do have the occasional person like, our friend from the channel, Galarian in Depth, who runs his own channel about Galarian and is passionate about the lore and the history and the cultures of Galaria, and they know these things, but most people don't. The advantage you get from setting a campaign in something with a real world touchstone is this idea of resonance. Your players will already understand how this world works. If we're playing in a Greek campaign and I start talking about a military city, a culture of warriors, okay, and I call the city Acroas, but everybody goes, Sparta, I got it. Yeah, it is Sparta, with a little couple of things changed on it. And you go, okay, I get it. That makes sense. Like, you don't need my real world knowledge has done a lot of the heavy lifting, and my character can live and interact in this world based on some real world touchstones. Same thing true, again, going back to Magic the Gathering. That game has mechanics, a mechanic like flying. Fundamentally, even if you don't know what the game mechanic means, you kind of get a sense of what that means. You're like, okay, this creature can fly. They probably can go up in the air and they can go over things and then land. Okay, great. That we understand what flying is. We have birds and planes, so we understand what flying is. But if you have a mechanic in your game that doesn't necessarily resonate to something that we have in our real world, now suddenly you have to explain it. And suddenly it has to take up a lot more of your sort of brain CPU. And so going back fully, the advantage to something like an Egyptian or Greek themed campaign is if you run an Egyptian themed campaign, even an extremely fantasy version of one, like Amonkhet from Magic the Gathering, you can rely on these cultural touchstones. Okay, there's a big river in the desert, and you're like, okay, it's like the Nile. It floods. It's the lifeblood. Okay, got it. Are there pyramids? Yes, there are. Do they embalm their dead? Sure, they do. And you can add fantasy elements to that. You can change things up. In fact, sometimes one of the most effective things you can do with resonance is take something that is very much obvious in our real world cultural touchstone and sort of flip it on its end, right? Because you want to specifically call out that these things aren't the way they are. And then maybe you point out that they're different in your fantasy world because of the existence of something like magic or something like, monsters. So, hold on a sec, my dogs are wrestling. Okay, there we go. All right. So yeah, that is, Nightish says, Derek explained the power of memes. Yes, exactly. Memes are all about resonance. William Brandis says, don't heat death yourself. This is true. That happened to me in our first nights of or Quest for the Frozen Flame. I closed the door because my dogs were being really loud. I have a big computer here that's running hot because it's got to run the stream and it's got to, do this. And at the time I was running 2 instances of Foundry so that I can OBS. And that was making my computer run even harder. I've got lights here. I've got lights here. And then the door was closed and it got really hot. And I almost passed out on stream. It was great. So yes, great question. Thank you very much. And, moving on, by the way, as a reminder, I kind of said this before, but I'll say it again. We are only a couple of patrons away from 200 patrons. And, I would love, I'll tell you this. If we get to 200 patrons, we are going to do another round of stickers. We did our first round of stickers a couple months ago. People got the very first piece of Knights of Last Call merch. If we can get to 200 patrons this month, we will send out a new print run of stickers. So let's do it. Sign up, get a sticker if you're not signed up already. Awesome. Thank you. All right, what system would you recommend for the first-time TTRPG players? PBTA or a D20 system? Nightish, great question. D20. I mean, here's the thing. In reality, I would say PBTA. And the story, I use this, by the way, all the time, is I have done this before, where I have experimented with people who have not played role-playing games before. And I've told this story before, but one of the things that I've always noticed in role-playing games is I will describe a scenario. And the classic scenario is, this, I think, literally happened the first time I ever tried to run an RPG for Bob. Actually. I was like, Bob, what's your daughter's favorite Disney movie? And he said Frozen. And so we made up this Frozen adventure on the spot. Anyways. I was just trying to show him the ropes. And, the character is moving through the woods, and then there's suddenly a war cry, and breaking from the bush at the edge of the road and the tree line, out comes a screaming orc or a ferocious bandit. And they have an axe raised over their head, and they are charging at you and swinging their axe down at you. Every time I've ever done this, to a new player, the first thing they always do, they immediately start role-playing. They say, I leap out of the way. I dodge. Can I get my sword out? Do I have a shield? Can I block it? Is there something for me to hide behind? And every time, if I'm playing, some game that I just randomly made up because I wanted to show Bob how RPGs work, or if I'm playing Powered by the Apocalypse, I say, yeah, absolutely. Roll plus dexterity and see if you can leap out of the way. And they go, yeah, that's awesome. But anytime I've ever done that scenario with someone, and I've been playing D20, I go, oh no, you just have to stand there. I'm going to roll a dice and we're going to see if you get hit or not. But my character's really dexterous. Yeah, it's baked into your armor class. And maybe if you've been playing these games for a long time, it doesn't seem this way, but rolling dice feels like an action. It feels active. You, the player, are doing something. And so then it feels like your character is doing something. Rolling dice makes you feel like you are the active player. So whether or not in the fiction, that character might be leaping about, even if it's just represented by +4 to their AC because of their 18 dex. To a new player who is used to, what do you do on Monopoly when it's not your turn? Nothing. What do you do on Monopoly when it is your turn? You roll the dice. What do you do when, it's the game of life and it's not your turn? Nothing. What do you do when it's your turn? You spin the wheel. Getting to do something, getting to generate a random number makes you feel like it's your turn. and it makes you feel like you're in control. And so whether we want to admit it or not, when an enemy attacks a player and the player doesn't get to roll anything or doesn't get to do anything, it creates, I think, a feeling in the new player. Now, I can't tell you this for sure because obviously it's my mindset is biased from years of playing D20. But I think even if I think if you really thought hard about it, if you closed your eyes and you imagine it, I think we all kind of imagine our character as kind of standing still, kind of going Final Fantasy mode, like, JRPG mode. And when it's not their turn, they're kind of just like, taking hits, like, I think we just think that way. I think we imagine our characters being dynamic and active when we're rolling dice. But when it's not our turn, and even if we're being attacked, I think we view it very differently. And I know new players do. So from that perspective, I think PBTA is way better because I think I also think it avoids missing sucking as much. You get a lot more partial successes and instead of just flat out misses. And even when the player misses in PBTA, the GM can make as hard and as direct of a move as they would like to. A player could miss in PBTA, but if it's established well in the fiction, you could totally have that character still succeed, just maybe at a high cost, or give them an option. You can succeed, you can climb to the top of the wall, but if you do, you lose your backpack with all of your gear. What choice do you want to make? Hard choice is a classic GM move in PBTA games. And so players don't feel so much like, oh, I took my turn, I did nothing, I guess I'll wait till my turn again. I think D20 can create bad play experiences, especially for new players. If a new player comes in and has one of those sessions where you just roll low and accomplish nothing, yeah, in D20, when you roll low, you do basically nothing. And so if you roll low a lot in the course of a couple-hour session, the player might go, oh, how was D&D? You got to play for the first time. They go, yeah, I kind of did nothing. I kind of sat around and nothing happened. And I mean, other people were doing stuff, but it felt like my person didn't really do anything, and it was kind of lame, actually, and I don't want to play ever again. So I would say PBTA. But that being said, D20 is just everywhere, and I think you're going to see a lot more people when they come to you and say, hey, I really want to get into role-playing games. They mean Dungeons & Dragons, right? Dungeons & Dragons was already like the Xerox of the copy machine world, right? Or the Kleenex of the tissue world. But now it is by far. And when people say RPG, they kind of basically mean D&D. Not to mention, the least of which, maybe the worst thing that you could ever do to somebody is have them play a PBTA game for their first game. And they go, wow, this was an incredible, amazing experience. This whole extemporaneous story was coming out of nowhere. I felt totally part of the creative process. Nobody knew what was going to happen. It was chaotic. It was crazy. All of my turns felt very dynamic and everything was happening. And then they're like, it was so much fun. And they're like, I want to keep, let me go find a game. Let me go find a table that is playing this game. And then you can find absolutely no one playing this game. And you end up in a D&D campaign or something like that, or a Pathfinder game. And you're just sitting there on your turn like, I attack. I miss. No, I'm done. So, which isn't to say that every PBTA game is made of rainbows and gold, but yeah. So yeah, I would personally say PBTA, but don't hurt them. Don't hurt them too much. Don't set their hopes too high. Egonet says, what do you do when you have writer's block? Easy, Egonet. Easy. You use an oracle. I love Tome of Adventure Design, which just came out with a new version. I'm seeing if it's back here somewhere. Yeah, I don't know where it is. Random tables, basically. Lognit. I thought it was Eognet. Lognit. There's the Gamemaster emulator, GME. There is Tome of Adventure Design. You can look online for GM Oracle. I think random ideas push me in better and more creative directions than anything else than writer's block. Anytime, and even if it doesn't seem like it makes sense at first, a lot of times the idea changes many degrees by the time it gets to a final idea. But just rolling on a random table for an idea about what someone's motivation is, and this could be something that you don't have to do this at the table. One of the differences between Ben and I, Ben in the chat, by the way, Ben loves to roll at the table. Like he loves to roll in C2, right there, and I'm okay with that to a certain extent, but I really love to roll like before a session, just to get ideas and have some sense of what maybe an NPC's plan is. I like to have a little bit of pre-knowledge, but sometimes it can be fun to, disclaim decision-making and let the dice fly. But Ben just put in chat there his favorite oracles, GME, UNE, Perilous Wilds is one that I really like. 100 Wilderness Hexes I have as well. That one's also very good. I have the GME and UNE as well. But I really do love Perilous Wilds as well. But I also recommend the Tome of Adventure Design. I think it's from Mythmere. Where the hell is it? We had a link to it in our one thing. I used to keep it by my bedpost at night. But anyways. So yeah, that's really good. That's great. All right, moving on. Let's see, questions. Ooh, Ben mentioned Al-Qadim. Al-Qadim, very, very good. Again, one of those things that as a kid, I thought Al-Qadim was stupid. I thought Meztica was stupid. But now as an adult, I think playing in like an Arabian Nights inspired world of evil sorcerers and genies and golden palaces and like shining like jewels in the endless deserts and the sapphire seas, and I think that'd be really awesome, but very cool. Yeah, Al-Qadim was very cool. Kieran KC, good friend of the show. Thank you. How's it going, Karen? Question: seems like the last PBTA video did okay, approximately 1K last I checked, but I thought the discussion was awesome. So will there be more PBTA videos despite the lack of mass appeal? KC, come and ask us. This is more of a channel question than a Gamemaster question. But since we're here, we'll answer. So what it really comes down to here, folks, Knights of Last Call is a business. Knights of Last Call LLC. Some people call it Cocklick. I won't say who. It could be us. KOLC is a business. I have expenses. I have things that I pay for. I have players that I pay. I have a studio that I rent. Now, obviously, we ended up doing a lot more live streams from home, but we're going to be doing our new live game in person. So it'll be in person live, a la, Critical Role, at least the way they used to it. I was devastated. I was like shocked the other day when I learned that they don't go live anymore, that it's pre-recorded. Anyways. So we have expenses. So making money is a goal. The other thing is we put a lot of time and effort into these live streams and into making content, and it's nice to get some financial considerations back. So money. So what makes this channel money? Well, not YouTube. What makes this channel money is Patreon, tips, super chats. Okay, folks like you who show up to these live streams and donate. Folks like you who see these videos or watch our other videos and say, this is the kind of content I want to see, I support. I like the way that these people are thinking and talking and communicating. I want to be part of their discussions and conversations, and they support us with a Patreon. So ultimately, I kind of don't care if there's mass appeal. What's important to me is, for those couple of percentage points of people who want to become patrons, how do I appeal to them? We're roughly at 200 people in the Patreon. We have 5,000 subscribers. Excuse me. So that's 4%. So 4% of our subscribers are patrons. So what would make that 5% or 6% or 7%? Those are really what I'm thinking about. So the views don't matter to me as much as connecting to that rarefied air, right? To that elite of the elite, to that 5%, that top 5% of our viewers who we connect with, who connect with us, who basically we're vibing. right? And they say, I want to support you with my hard-earned money. And so ultimately, as you know, the Patreon supports or doesn't support any decision we make, that's kind of what really influences that. So long story short, will there be more PBTA videos? Yes, because I love PBTA. Our new actual play game, which is going to be based in Root, is a PBTA game. So not only will there be a live Root PBTA game twice a month on Tuesdays, opposite the Tuesdays where we play Quest for the Frozen Flame and Pathfinder 2, but the simple fact that there is going to be a PBTA game live on the show, I think it means that there's going to be more questions and more videos and more things to talk about. Yeah, so yes, the answer is yes. With the caveat that, I can't, if my patrons, start leaving en masse because, I'm not making enough Pathfinder 2 content, or if my patrons say, Derek, PBTA is so lame and so, weak, we want you to be doing 2D20 or something, or Cypher or something. I have to respond to a certain extent to what my customers and my clients, especially my paying patrons, do want. So now I can't please everyone all the time, but I can certainly try to figure out a way to do the most good. Savolre says, question, on the GNS scale, what do you value more, the G or the S? Wow, that's a great question. So I'll answer. I'll answer with a real answer, and then I'll answer with the kind of bullshit answer. G, gamist. As a person who enjoys board games, as a person who enjoys games like Magic the Gathering, as a person who enjoys games like 4th edition D&D, I like well-designed games. I like games that have interesting mechanics that make the actual act of playing the game fun. In other words, if you removed all of the role-playing elements from this game, all of the story elements, would this still be an interesting activity to partake? And if the answer is yes, then the fact that I can add on top of it all of these other mechanical things, like, or I should say all these other elements like narrative and story and role-playing, and then that's just, that's gravy on top. I don't like playing bad games. Now, the kind of bullshit answer, or the kind of cop-out answer, is it depends on the game. If I am playing a game that is very much rooted in trying to simulate some sort of fantasy reality, then yeah, obviously simulation at that point has to take a higher priority. And I want that to be more prevalent in my game. And I want game mechanics don't become as important as long as whatever it is that we're doing feels like it's doing a good job of simulating this sort of shared fantasy reality that we have. But even as time has gone on, I have lessened my desire for simulation and increased my desire for emulation. And we've talked about this in the past when we talked about GNS, and I've sort of added this new E. Maybe it's a GNS/E, because I can't figure out yet mentally if S and E are two sides of the same coin, or maybe they're a different component, but I feel like maybe they're connected, they're correlated in some way. Emulation is different than simulation, and I think that that's really important to talk about. And one of the reasons that I actually came up with this idea is thanks to Ben in the chat. When we were talking, Ben, he likes what he likes, he doesn't like what he doesn't like, and you might see there's some chat going on about the 2D20 system. And one of the games that the 2D20 engine did was Conan, Age of Conan. No, it's just called Robert E. Howard's Conan. And I like the 2D20 engine. In fact, I own it. We own it for, we have it for Dune. Ooh, Dune, really sweet, awesome, very cool. And then we also have for Star Trek Adventures, which I first played thanks to Patreon. A community member, Damien, ran this, and I got a chance to play it. It was really awesome. But this is not my book. I borrowed this from Aaron. This is the Conan book, which is, again, still in the 2D20 system. And I tend to agree with Ben that I don't know that it's as good. Because when you play Conan the Barbarian, a lot of people say, oh, you should play a game system like Basic. Well, a game system like Basic, when a character goes in against a fight against, 5 or 6 armored men, they usually end up dead. But in Conan the Barbarian, you don't, right? Conan the Barbarian, in the books, he lives. He's always kicking ass and taking names. It's dangerous, but he's not in danger. And so what you really want to do is emulate the feel of Conan. You don't necessarily simulate what Conan's world would really look like. Because if you simulated what Conan's world would really look like, Conan would be dead real quick a lot of the time. So I think the problem with simulation is people think they want simulation, and then when they get it, they're kind of disappointed because they didn't want simulation. They really wanted emulation. They wanted a world that feels like another world that they are trying to sort of copy. So, all right. It's kind of a complicated question, but yeah, awesome. Let's see what else we got here. Oh boy, we got a lot of questions right here. Going through the chat here. Yes, new stickers. Stickers if we get to 200. I agree with Mr. Williams here. 5e for all of its points is a good entry point for new players, and I said as much in our 5e versus Pathfinder 2 video. Steven says, rolling dice feels great when they have some impact. When nothing happens, it's a big bummer. Yeah, I mean, dice are kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of situation because, look, straight up, like nothing beats, I love Powered by the Apocalypse, but nothing beats rolling a nat 20 and critting and doing the impossible or doing the crazy thing or critting and killing the guy, right? That is top tier D&D. But it's like sometimes when I play like D&D or Pathfinder 2, it's like I would almost rather have my character die than miss a lot, because at least if I'm dead, it meant that like all the enemies were attacking me, and I guess kind of sorta I maybe did something, like someone else is alive because I'm dead because I took all these attacks. But like I'd almost rather would be dead than miss a bunch and just have nothing happen. That's my biggest gripe about D&D and Pathfinder 2. I did a whole video about it, which no one understood. I mean, maybe some people did, and they joined the Patreon. But like, I was like, missing sucks. People are like, what do you want? You millennial entitled shit. Like, you just want to always hit and get everything you want, and you just always want to be successful. Oh, you're like, it's like, no, you don't understand anything that I'm talking about. But yeah, I just hate when nothing happens. That's like that's the least interesting thing that can happen, right? Is nothing. What happened? Tell me. Nothing. Like, okay. Let's see. Cheese, Mr. Cheese of Ages. I remember a narrative system called Wushu that had an interesting system where the roles weren't to determine success. Everything the players did succeeded. The role was determined by how much. Yeah. I know that system. I've played that system at Indie Games on Demand as well. And yeah, it's very much in that style of what's the word I'm looking for? Over the top martial arts sort of action. It's sort of an action RPG, I think is what they called it. Yeah, I think that came out, maybe 6 or 7 years ago. I remember they did like let me see on Google here. Yeah, Black Belt edition. Yeah, for sure. Very cool. Very cool game. I have played it. Oh, KC talking about when we were talking about AC. Yeah, new player still doesn't understand why they can't actually dodge. It's like, well, wait, no, but I want to dodge. Well, yeah, you are dodging, but no, I'm not. Well, it's in your AC, so and you're training that out of him, right? Exactly. Let's see. Right, KC, exactly. This person's clearly engaged, right? They want to participate, and the game is saying, "Shut up, be quiet, sit down, do nothing." Just listen to what happens to you. Be told. And I think that's the problem. Rick says, Lazy DM's Guide has great random ideas. Here is a surprising thing. I have met Michael Shea at Gen Con a couple of times, and I've even had conversations with him that it's my understanding, not like me and him personally, but like a group of us at Gen Con, that I think ended up becoming part of the Lazy GM's Guide, because Michael Shea he became popular during 4th edition. I was very into 4th edition, and he used to read his blog all the time. I have never read this book, this Lazy DM's Guide. I don't know that I would like it. I don't know. I really am interested. Maybe I should get it and do a live react to it, because I've heard a lot of people talk about it, but when a lot of people talk about a book, to me, it usually means it's not good. So, yikes. All right. Ben likes Toad, but it's unwieldy at the table. Yes, Ben likes his stuff right there, in place. D30 DM Companion is awesome too. Okay, I don't know that one either. All right, I'm looking for questions. By the way, as I'm looking for questions, remember, if you want to show your support, feel free to tip or super chat. And I'll certainly answer your question straight away, but it looks like we're getting through them pretty quick. Question, here we go. What is Root the best at, and how do we use that system strength to help us GM the game? That's a great question. So what Root is best at, okay, let's have some preface. Now, I know a lot of people here have been talking about PBTA, we've been talking about PBTA, but let's make sure we understand. So Root's a Powered by the Apocalypse game, and that means when you attempt any sort of action, you're going to roll 2d6, you're going to add a stat, basically, and if you get a 10 or higher, your character succeeds, and if you get a 6 or lower, the character fails, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's not like missing in D20. It's not that nothing happens when the GM doesn't roll dice in Powered by the Apocalypse games. So if you basically in D&D terms, when you miss, it's like, that's like the monster gets to take a turn. But don't think of it as the monster getting to take a turn. Think of it as the world gets to take a turn. So bad things might happen. And you might say, well, that's not fair. And it's like, well, then you shouldn't have rolled low. And then if you roll between a 7, 8, or if you roll a 7, 8, or 9 total, then your character gets a mixed success, or sometimes called a soft hit. They achieve what they are going after, but there's usually some sort of additional cost. So that's Powered by the Apocalypse baseline. But what does Root really add? What Root adds to the game is a series of tracks, they're called. But these are like hit points, but they only go up to like 4 or 5. So they're very, very precious. And these tracks, think of them as like a row of empty boxes, little check boxes. And they represent your character's capabilities. There's a track for how injured you are. There's a track for how exhausted you are. There's a track for, instead of tracking all of your miscellaneous equipment, there's a track called depletion that sort of represents, what do you have in your pockets? Okay. When you play Root and your character succeeds partially or fails, the GM and you, depending on the questions asked, are going to mark some of these items. And as you use up your character's resources, as you use up your character's exhaustion, as you use up your character's injuries, as you use up your character's depletion, as you use up the wear and tear on your character's equipment, your options become more and more limited, or your options become more and more forced. You might get to a point where you would love to, have your character take more damage, but if you do that, they are going to die. So instead, you are forced to, say, have your character's sword break, or you are forced to have to give up the pursuit and the Marquis de Cat guardsmen get away, and you're not able to stop them. The tracks function as sort of an internal clock. It's a resource track that gives the player a constant sense of tension, because they are always going to be making trade-offs between what is good for what does their character want to achieve in the game, and how much resources do I have to achieve that victory. Now, obviously, if your character rolls really well all the time, that's great. And, it's a role-playing game. So if you roll really high all the time, you're going to get everything you want and not have to pay any cost for it. It's awesome. But that is not how Powered by the Apocalypse games are designed to do. You're going to roll, 7s, 8s, and 9s. You're going to roll 6s or lowers. And you're going to find that these resource tracks begin to deplete. And you're going to run out of them. And then you have to start making different decisions. Powered by the Apocalypse games typically don't have these kind of more complicated or complex resource systems. And I love them. I think that they are awesome. I think that they have the exact right number of them in Root to create interesting dimensions for your characters. The non-players, the NPCs, have similar tracks. In some cases, they are more simplified, but in other cases, they have tracks that even the PCs don't have. Like the NPCs have a morale track. And if an NPC runs out of morale, well, then they are going to respond appropriately as if their character has essentially given up. So I think tracks help you as a GM, both in terms of the moves of the game, but also in terms of making moves, to mechanically represent where your character is in the fiction, right? When your character has all of their injury boxes unmarked, they are full of strength and vigor. When your character has 3 or 4 injury boxes marked and only has 1 left or something, not only does that reflect in the way that you're going to play your character, but you understand what that means mechanically in the game. It means that there are certain moves now which might be off the table for you. There might be certain moves now which are very risky or dangerous for you. And you are taking ownership of that when you choose to engage in that role. Instead of kind of saying, I don't know what's going to happen, it really all kind of relies on what the GM says, which is fine, but it can leave players feeling a little bit out in the dark. By having the track systems, by the way, this is very similar to Blades in the Dark, which uses a stress system, which is just 1 track called stress. Root uses like 3 or 4 of them, and I actually like that a little bit better. I think it provides more nuance, even if it is more bookkeeping. I think it puts more, it gives the players a little bit more understanding of what is the current status of things. Where do we stand? And so I think what Root is best at is, there's this sort of overarching move that Powered by the Apocalypse games use, which is tell them the consequences and ask, or tell them the cost and ask. And that's what Root really comes down to. Players are going to want to do things in the game world, and it's up to you to ask them what are the consequences, what are the costs that they are willing to bear. And sometimes in Root, I think you are well positioned to make those costs be their resource tracks. Injury, exhaustion, depletion, wear. Because now you are letting the player say how important this is to them and whether or not they are willing to pay this cost to achieve this narrative aim in the game. Now, of course, they could just roll really high and then they get what they want for free. That's great. That's why rolling high feels good in Powered by the Apocalypse games. Still, even though we don't have success and failure, it's still good to roll high because then you get what you want for free. But when you don't, and you have to make a tough choice, it can be interesting to see what choices your character makes. And I think that tells us a lot about your character, and doing so in a way that actually has an impact on the game. It isn't just fluffy bullshit. It actually has meaning because, it could affect your character and it could affect what your character is going to be able to do in the future. All right. Yeah, there we go. You are an hour late, Eon Rider, but you made it. Welcome. Yeah, I want something to feel like it was actually like dangerous, but in reality, it's still 95% chance of success succeeds. I think failing forward might be my largest growth area as a GM, says Henry. Welcome, Henry. If you're wondering why Henry has a cool little Knights of Last Call badge next to his name, it's because Henry has decided to join the adventure and become a YouTube member, which you can do right below this video. There's a little button that says join. When you join, you become a member of our YouTube channel. This is separate from our Patreon. It's through YouTube, but it allows you, not only does it give you loyalty badges representing how long you've been with us. You can see Henry's is blue because if he was just starting off, he'd be green, but now he's blue. It also gives you access to custom emotes.
$3. Forgot to include the excellent random esoteric creature generator for lot FB.
Ben says, forgot to include the excellent random esoteric creature generator for LOTFP, Lamentations of the Flame Princess. I don't know that one, Ben. The Random Esoteric Creature Generator. I got to be honest with you. I don't know that one. Random, oh, well, Google knows it. It is by Mr. James Raggi. And it's for Legend of the Flame, Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And it looks like it's available on Amazon.com for, oh my God, $95. Sheesh. Hopefully they have it in PDF. But thank you, Ben. Yeah, Ben, if you want random tables and you want random procedural events, Ben A and William Brandis, aka Aaron Smith, are your best options. But Ben is the king of the Oracle. All right. Damien asks, question, would you add success with a cost to 6th edition or PF3? That's a great question. No, because those games are bad at what cost? Damien, what cost? Hit points? Like, that's the only resource that you have in these games, and everything else makes it impossible for you to play. You know, if your +2 striking sword breaks in Pathfinder 2, you can just stop attacking. So these games are so intrinsically tied to their binary success-failure condition. It's tough. It's really tough. I think you'd have to really go back to the drawing board. I think if I were to design, I don't know. That's a tough question. It's like if I were to design a D20 game from the ground up, I think what I would do is I would make the outcomes of combat separate from the simulation of the narration of what's going on in the fiction. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, when you ever play like a computer game and you're playing and your characters are dying in the game, you know, in the fight, but it's like one of those special fights, and then everybody's dead. And like, normally, if this was just some random encounter, right, it would just say, doo, 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 you're dead, right? You know, all your party members have been slain, and it would go back to your save point. But like, everybody dies, and then it like goes back to like the, you know, the not the fight screen, and like your character's like standing there, you know, like, how could you do this to us? How could you betray us? You know, you're like, but like, if it was really a random encounter, you'd be dead. It's kind of like doing that in a fantasy RPG. It's like the idea that, like, imagine if you had rules where the combat was legitimately fair and balanced. Like, it wasn't 99.9% chance that the players are going to win. It was 50-50, you know, and good tactics and solid uses of the player's abilities. Maybe it's a little bit higher than that. I don't know, but it's a real fight, fairly balanced. But we divorce what happens in the combat from what happens in the narrative. Meaning, if everybody in normal game, if we're playing in a combat and everybody dies, if everybody's defeated, then that's a TPK and the game is over. But what if the combat was its like own little mini dimension? Like I mean, not literally, I'm being metaphorical here, but like the mirror dimension, right? From Doctor Strange. Combat is a sort of a mini game, a sub game that we use because it's fun and we get to play and we get to use some of our abilities. And then we look at what happens at the outcome of that to make a decision about what happens in our narrative. What do I mean by that? What I mean is, let's say it's a fair fight in a true sense and the party dies, right? Everybody is defeated. And again, in a normal game, we would think it's a TPK. But instead, what it means is when we go back to the narrative, we go, okay, the party lost. What does that mean? They lost really badly. Maybe that does mean someone dies. Maybe it means that they are taken prisoner. Maybe it means that the enemy gets away. Maybe it means that the necromancer completes their ritual. But we are separating the narrative reality from the game mechanic of the combat. And we are allowing the combat or the whatever process to sort of be its own thing and actually have like fun, challenging gameplay elements to it. But we aren't binding ourselves and being beholden to the outcomes of that combat as being narratively true in our, real world game. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but I think like that's how I would do it instead. So Ian Ryder decided it better to me. So Zero isn't dead. Yeah, he said, so Zero is dead. Zero isn't dead. Yeah, so Zero isn't dead, just out of the fight. And when everyone's at zero, you get a defeat cutscene, but the game continues. Exactly. That's exactly what it means, Ian Ryder. And more importantly, it means that like maybe if the players do defeat all the enemies, but let 2 of the 4 of them get taken out of the fight, when you go back to the narration, yes, the players won, but they owe, this is from Burning Wheel, by the way, they owe a concession to the enemies, right? Because you got to give them something, right? They did take half of you out. It's not just we won the day, we kicked their ass, they're all dead, we're perfectly fine. You're like, no, look, 2 of you were taken out. Yes, you took out all the monsters, but you owe me something. You owe me a concession, right? It's like a negotiation. Yes, you are going to get the bigger piece of the cake, but you owe me something because I did take out 2 of you. And you go, okay, I don't know, maybe we kill the guards, but the necromancer is able to complete his ritual, and the undead demon is summoned. Right? Exactly. And you're like, okay, that's fair. Yeah, like
Henry
that works.
Tips $10. Good convo. Gotta go. Catch you on the VOD.
Thank you very much for that $10 tip, Henry. Henry, that's very, very generous of you. Thank you for your continued support. Hopefully you do catch us on the VOD, buddy. We'll see you around the Discord. We'll see you around the chat. All the best to you, bud, and we'll see you later. Thank you again for your continued support. Really appreciate you and appreciate all that. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, how I would change that up. We're going back here to before. On the flip side, I would rather nothing happen than I stab myself in the foot on a natural one. And Ben says fumbles are lame, and I could not agree more. I think fumbles are completely lame. I've never liked fumbles, ever. Knightish says fumble tables be really dumb. Yeah. Fumble tables are for people who want their D&D campaign to be very slapsticky. And there's a lot of people who, for some odd reason, want their D&D games to be very slapsticky. I don't get it. It's not my thing. Right. Yeah, Ben is making a great point here with 7C. You neither fail nor die unless the group agrees. Exactly. So again, there are games that do this already and do this better. So yeah, for sure. Derek said he'd do a live reaction. Who are you, No Nat? No, but I mean, my live reactions tend to be a lot hotter. When I don't like something, I'll let you know about it. And I don't like a lot of things. So there is that. The Root CRB gave me better tips for running my games, not gonna lie. Yeah, it's a great book. It's a beautiful book. I recommend picking it up and reading through it. I think a lot of the Powered by the Apocalypse games are worth reading just for the GM section. And don't get so caught up about like the specifics of the GM moves. Again, these are things that as a game master you probably are doing or should be doing anyways. But the idea, the philosophy of how to run a role-playing game is very different in these games. And if you try to play a Powered by the Apocalypse game like you're running a D20 game, you're gonna have some problems. You're not gonna have as much fun as you maybe could have. Henry, who just dipped out. What's the deal with Burning Wheel? I've heard you reference it a few times, but don't really have a handle on what it's like. Ooh, that is a very complex question, Henry. What's the deal with Burning Wheel? Burning Wheel is probably like one of the most complicated role-playing game systems of all times. And it has a mechanic that is both interesting and detailed and in-depth, but not in like a simulationist way, like a Roll Master game, which is a very crazy game from the 80s. But it's done in a way to promote a certain type of feeling or sensation or decision. And it approaches role-playing games from a very, very sort of both, I don't know, scientific and yet artistic point of view. It's like a watch. It's like a mechanical watch. It is a precisely engineered miracle. And it's easy to look at it and dismiss it because you're like, oh, watches are easy, you know, I got it at the time on my phone. But when you think about it from just how complex of a system it is, and to achieve something very, very particular, it's a very impressive game. I don't know, I can't go into more detail without eating up the rest of our time here, but we could talk about Burning Wheel for sure. Texan says, when is the Root game starting? I'm so pumped to get started with my group. August. You know, we have to finish our studio build out. Like I said, I luckily I got most of my work done, and I'm going to basically be working now on my studio build out. We want to build a cool little set for our Root game, get everything set up to go back. Again, we've been doing all of our gaming over Foundry via, you know, at home, so we're going to be getting back live and in person. It takes a little bit of a little work to get up, but luckily the chat pulled through last month with a $500 tip goal over the course of a couple live streams, and we're able to put that money into building up a new table and a new set so that we can do this thing. So yeah, I think we're looking for probably like the 9th or the 17th. We'll figure it out as we get closer to it, but something in there. Nightish, that's exactly right. I like to think the narrative power returns to the GM on a 6 or lower. I mean, you're always in a conversation in an RPG. The thing the 6 does is it basically says, he's talking about Powered by the Apocalypse here. So the times that a GM can make a move, and again, this is true even if you're not playing Powered by Apocalypse, is, again, when the players look at you and say, and ask what happens or what's going on, if they give you a golden opportunity or if they roll a 6 or lower. So what is a golden opportunity? A golden opportunity is, I say, you know, the archer, the crossbowman loads a quarrel and points it square at you, you know, from across the square, and says, don't you make a move. And the player says, yeah, screw that guy. I'm making a run for it. Guess what? You just handed the GM a golden opportunity. They told you what was going on, and they are now allowed to say, yeah, okay, he shoots you, you know. Like if you say, I'm going to jump out the window, you go, okay, well, you're going to take damage, because, as established, because you are just giving me the move. You know, you're almost like calling me out, like, hey, you set this up, that this is what's going on. This is the threat. This is the situation. And I am doing exactly what in the fiction would be bad for me, or this thing would just absolutely happen. We've all established that. You did establish that. And so, yes, I can make a move. But I think part of the idea is, if the party was, let's say, you know, Indiana Jones style, if the group is like moving through the tunnel, and I say, you know, the party goes, we move down the tunnel, what happens next? And I say, oh, a ball falls down and crushes you to death. Yeah, that is technically a GM move, but that's kind of a dick move. Part of the idea of Powered by the Apocalypse is, when the players look to you to see what happens, as a GM, you are supposed to be making what the game calls soft moves. These are setups. These are situations. So when the party says, we move down the hallway, and they say, what happens? I say, you hear a sickening crunch, a massive stone ramp drops, and a huge multi-ton boulder begins rolling down at you. What do you do? Now the party has to make a decision. Now, if the party says, I stand there, okay, then that's handing you a golden opportunity, and you can say you're squished like a bug, and you're dead, or you're unconscious, or you're pasted. I mean, it all depends on what's going on in your Powered by the Apocalypse game. Are you a superhero, or are you just some guy? But more than likely, the party member is going to say, well, I am going to try to, you know, leap out of the way, or I'm going to try to duck underneath it, or I'm going to try to outrun it. And now that possibly triggers a move, and we make a move. And then if the players roll a 6 or lower, now the GM has the permission to be as hard as they want to be, as mean, I guess you could say, but you shouldn't be mean because you're trying to be a fan of the characters. So you do want to establish and go with the fiction. And again, you have an agenda in a Powered by the Apocalypse game. And the agenda in a Powered by the Apocalypse game is not to TPK your party. It might happen, but your job is to fill the characters' lives with danger and adventure. And it's to keep the story feral, to keep them on their toes, and to make the world, portray the world, and make the world seem fantastic, at least the dungeon world. And when a player rolls a 6, it's like they are the ones who tempted fate here, right? Because they are reached an inflex point in the story where it could either go good for them or bad for them, and they are choosing to put, you know, their life, their character's livelihood on the line with this dice roll. And when they roll a 6 or less, yes, you are returning the power to the GM, but with this added bonus, this caveat of legitimacy, of saying, now you can be a little bit more mean. Now you can be a little bit more direct. Now you can be a little bit more, aggressive with your move, because there was a dice roll that led us to this point. And it's almost like one of these weird things where it's like, if out of nowhere you said something really, mean and damaging or painful to a character, and they might say, well, that's not very fair. You're just making that up. And you might be like, yeah, I mean, that is true to a certain extent. But if a player rolls poorly, and then you say, let's say they're trying to impress somebody and they roll really poorly, and you go, yeah, so it turns out that this person will only let you into the ballroom if you break up with your girlfriend. And the character goes, the player goes, oh, that's not fair. And I go, well, you shouldn't have rolled low. That's not my fault. That's kind of your fault. William Brandis, Aaron Smith in the chat, always tells me like when he grounds his kids, they'll be mad at him or something, and he'll say, well, it's not my fault. It's your fault. Why did you leave a huge mess? I'm kind of neutral in all of this. I gave you a choice, clean up. You chose not to. That's you handing me a golden opportunity, and I have to establish harm, or I have to deliver harm as established, and well, that is, you are grounded. And it's kind of not really me. I'm just the intermediary here for the situation. And so, it's the same thing with these Powered by the Apocalypse games. It puts these harder moves behind the die roll, because that way the GM can basically say, I'm kind of blameless here. You're the one who decided to take a chance, and you're the one who rolled the dice, and you're the one who rolled low, and that's not my fault. That's your fault. So, anyways. Question. Would you try re-implementing the deal half minimum damage from the PF2e playset? Absolutely. In fact, one of our patrons did his own version of it after we talked about this on the Missing Sucks video many, many, many months ago, one of our early patrons. Vin, self-confessed cynic, been on the Spells channel a couple times. He did a version of glancing hits that he uses, and he added a couple other variations to it, but I would absolutely, I think Vin's version is pretty close to the direction that I would want to go in. I think what Mark did was half minimum damage. That is way too low. That's embarrassingly low. It also penalizes dice. So like half minimum from a D12 is 1 from a D12. And it's 1 from a D4. So like a D12 and a D4 doing the same amount of damage seems kind of wrong to me. I actually would probably just do half damage. So if your damage is 2d12 plus 6, you roll 2d12 plus 6. If you got a 24 damage, you deal 12. What Vin did, and I won't go into too detail about this because you can read about it in our Patreon, but he included mechanics that help characters mitigate some of that minimum damage. It also does a ton of things, which is really useful, because when you have minimum damage, one, it means that the fighter's supremacy isn't as important, because when the characters fight a higher level monster, we expect for them to miss more, but at least they're doing half damage, and it feels like they're making progress. But because they're doing half damage instead of full damage, my experience is that Pathfinder 2 bosses kind of melt really quickly, assuming you can hit them. And instead, it lets their armor class, instead of taking like big, huge chunks out of their hit points, it takes like smaller little chunks, and it feels a little bit more incremental. It also means that bosses don't need as high of an attack roll. when they attack players, and so they're not going to necessarily have to be critting all the time. Like, it also kind of gets into the math. Like, you can end up making it so that bosses, right? Because today, if like a boss misses twice in a round, like a single monster, it's like, it's a joke. Like, they've just missed out on like 30 or 40%, 50% of like all the damage and all the actions that they were going to do the entire fight. And if you make it so that the boss does even half damage on a miss, suddenly it's like, okay, this is more respectable, because it's very unlikely that the boss is going to critically miss and do nothing. And it's like they're always going to do some sort of damage. But then you don't need as high of an attack roll either, which means that you're not going to get these crazy situations where like the boss double crits and the person's unconscious, dying too, before they've even had a turn in the initiative order, which I also don't like. So yeah, I think it's a really good rule, and I'd love to see it played around. And the fact that Mark said it was originally in the game makes me even more respectful of the idea of doing it. Right, yeah, you do. Right, exactly. You do half damage on a miss, and a critical miss now means something. Normally, right now, in a Pathfinder 2, critical miss and a miss in terms of a strike action mean exactly the same thing. Nothing. It just means 0 damage. But now a critical miss actually has like a reason to be there. So, all right. Sorry, I'm getting up here, trying to read all these here. Steven says, Fumble rules punish better combat characters that are forced to roll more, so it's backwards. That's actually true, too. You're like, I have 2 weapons, and I make a lot more attack rolls, so I'm much more likely to roll fumbles, which doesn't necessarily make sense. We allow PCs to take a fumble card on Nat 1, and they gain a hero point if they do. Hey, if the players are at least making a choice, I at least respect that. So, and that could be a fun moment for you. And at least if the players have agency in it, Shadram, I think that at least, I feel a lot better about that in general. So I would say that. William Brennan says, I finished the question, so I believe that triggers a take a break move. I will take a break. Get a +1 forward when I come back. Hey, what's going on, Strat? How's it going? Let's see. Looking for questions. Question. I lied. This is an observation. All the best fiction comes from heroes failing forward, which is why I also hate Name of the Wind. Worst PC backstory ever. I agree. Players succeeding is boring. I mean, if the PCs, like when we've played Blades in the Dark before, I mean, sometimes, you know, like when you're playing a game like that, sometimes it can be interesting, but you know, the players will go on like a mission or a heist and they just roll really well. And so in the game, it's like, yep, you succeed, you get in. All right. But you come to the safe, but it's guarded by arcane magics and, oh, nope, you fully succeeded. Okay. Well, you broke into it. But as you try to escape, the guards are after you and you're all, okay, well, I'll outrun them. Well, you succeeded. So yeah. All right. Well, you did it. And it's like, yeah, it was like going to your job. Like you walked in, everything went according to plan, and you walked out. Now, again, from a certain standpoint, that's what your character would want, right? Your character would want it to be easy. Your character would want it to be a piece of cake. They don't want complications, right? We, though, do. You know, like at least I would think so. I think the players and the GMs do. But it all comes down to the mentality of your players. A good friend of mine, who I used to play RPGs with back in the day, and he recently he lived with me for a few months here in the last couple of years while he was home. He was out in San Francisco. He moved back home during the wildfires and crashed with me for a few months. And he was playing JRPGs. And he's like the kind of guy who's like, I want to be level 99. I don't ever want to fail. I want to beat every single thing. I want to be able to beat the boss with one attack. I don't ever want to be challenged. I don't ever want to have to use a mega elixir. I just want to win all the time. And like, if I was that character, like in real life, I'm like, yeah, that's what I would want. Like when I go to, every time I sit down to, figure out a data science model or write some Python code. I'm not sitting there going, I hope this is a challenge. I hope this almost pushes me to the brink. Boy, I hope I almost get fired today because of this presentation going so badly and I have to scramble to save it. Like, no, I want it to be smooth sailing, easy, phone it in, just make it, have it be as easy as it could possibly be. Have the code have no surprises, have the presentation go off without a hitch, to meet every objective and then some, and not have any problems. That's what I want in my real life. And some people also want that in their fantasy game. I guess. I don't know. Karn says, Karn, number 1, great name. Number 2, 99 elixirs. Exactly. Yep. It's like, it's like, I have to get every single mega elixir. Why? You're literally never going to use any of them. You would rather die, reload your game than use the mega elixir in the fight. It's ridiculous. So yeah, it's, some people want that. Stream Elements doing work, saying if you want to show your support for the Knights, use !tip or the link in the description below. That's right. Stream Elements is our preferred way to tip, but you can also use super chats. And if you're watching this on VOD, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Check out the Patreon. I really think you should come in at probably the champion level, but if you want to just see what we're about, we do have a Squire and Knight level, which are pretty cheap. About as cheap as Patreon will let it be, and that'll get you into our Discord. It'll get you into our Patreon, so you can see some of our videos and some of our special bonus features, and you can see what we're about maybe before deciding to increase your pledge and your donation. So we're going for 200, and I'd love to see you in there. Andrew says, I'd love to see a GM prep session for a PBTA game as someone that hasn't seen the system in motion. It's a cool idea, Andrew. Maybe something I'll take a note for future. I'll write that down. It's a good idea. I like it. Yeah, maybe something we could do is like a live stream or something like that. Now that I'm hoping that once I've got a bunch of projects for work, I've got a bunch of personal projects that I'm working on. And like once I get those all wrapped up, I really want to, don't hold me to this, I really want to add like a third live stream, maybe like on, I don't know, Saturday nights or something like that. I'm still at the point in my life where I'm not doing anything, I'm not going out or anything like that. I'll leave my house, but I'm still very respectful of the pandemic and trying to avoid completely unnecessary activities. And so, Saturday nights, I usually end up just kind of sitting at home. So, I don't know. I might want to try to turn that into sort of like a real exclusive kind of cozy stream where we get into the weeds on some really crazy stuff. We get Ben on here and we'll go deep on stuff. Question: have you ever played Shadowrun, and if so, which edition? I have played Shadowrun. I want to say it was 5th edition. It was the one that was really green. I don't know if that was 5th edition or 6th edition. 6th edition Catalyst? I don't know. Either way, I didn't like it. I don't know how to tell you. I don't know what to tell you. I didn't like it. I like Earth Dawn. But Shadowrun, the Cyberpunk has always kind of missed me a little bit. So part of it is just the setting. But like Cyberpunk fantasy, it feels like it's just trying to do too much. I'd rather play like a hard Cyberpunk game where it doesn't have magic and trolls and orcs and all that other stuff than play Shadowrun. So if I was going to play like a Cyberpunk game, I think it would be more clinical. Chris, what was the reason they passed on Glancing Blows? Mark explained, but I can't recall. It was just too complex and players weren't used to it. And again, this was like an alpha test, so people just thought it would be too much for people to understand. And, that's part of D&D's core bias, right? You either succeed or you fail. And this was introducing something that was like a partial success. And it was, it does add complication. It adds numerical complexity to the game and to the math. So, let's see here. Getting caught up. I think we're almost caught up. Ben, I'm down. I have no life. Great. Green was 4th edition. Okay, so that it was a while ago, Damien, so that was probably what it was. All right, we caught up to the chat, and it's 8:30, so great. Yeah. Well, now that I'm caught up, if anybody has any questions for me, I'll be able to get to them right away. I want to say thank you to Henry, Ben, and Jason B for their tips and donations. I want to say thank you to everyone who has continued to be an adventurer. Damien actually recently just renewed his adventurer membership for his 4-month streak, as did Mr. Stephen Palmer and Galarian In Depth, who is not here today, but all of them with fairly impressive streaks. I think you get a new badge color, maybe at 4 months or maybe at 6 months. I don't know. It's pretty good. My Saturday evenings are your Sunday afternoons, so you're in. All right, great. Question: you making your cat girl for Final Fantasy X? Final Fantasy, what number is that? 14? What? I don't know. I don't know what that means. I'm not playing Final Fantasy 14. 6 months. All right, Steven, 6 months. So almost there, but you'll be the first one. I don't. Is that the one that you guys play? I don't actually know what number it is. I lost track of it. What happened to the Leshy game? It's gonna happen. Strategy. We actually need. It's definitely gonna happen. It's definitely something we've continued to talk about. Bob's gonna run it. I'm gonna play in it. Cosplay it. Vin is gonna be in it. Smith is gonna be in it, and I don't know if we're gonna get another person to play in it or not, but it is definitely still happening. And for sure, Vin tipped too much money for it not to happen. So we just need to, again, I've been so busy with personal stuff and work, and I love this channel and I love all those stuff. And one day, who knows, maybe in some crazy world, I can go full time and do this. But unfortunately, my job comes first, and I just been trying to get a bunch of stuff done. So we just haven't had the time to get that prepped and get that ready. My excuse is work, and the rest of the guys, not only do they have jobs, they also have kids and families and wives. So I can only imagine how chaotic and hectic their life are. So we'll make it happen, though. We'll make it happen. Trust me, we get there eventually. We're not. I just don't like to phone things in. It's not in me to just turn the camera on and go. That's just not my. It's just not my thing. Oh my God, people are talking about Final Fantasy 14. Oh my gosh, look at this. Pretty damn good. Z forever. Final 14 is very good. Damien says if we do it on a Monday or a Tuesday, he could be our 4th. It's possible. I played 11 for like 2 months. I don't even know if I could do that. Anthony said when the Patreon blows up, he can go full time. Just got to switch to 5e first. I don't think that would even happen, Anthony. I mean, the fact of the matter is, it's not about 5e. It's just about the type of content that we make. We're just, I won't make a video unless I have a really good idea for one. And if I, every single time Bob and I sit down to do like a night school, we sit there beforehand, before we hit record, and I go, all right, well, we're going to talk about these basic concepts today. And Bob goes, all right, let's 30 minutes. Let's get it done. Stay on focus, and we'll get it done in 30 minutes. And then it ends up being like an hour and a half long. It's just no matter, we could switch to 5th edition. It still won't run out of it. Pawn no longer is 100% correct. He really is. I would totally run 4th edition. Actually, I would love to run 4th edition for some of our heroes on the Patreon, because I know, or whoever else is tipping to be there. I'd love to play 4th edition with everybody who's interested, but obviously we can't do that. But I think there's a lot of people. I'm going to say this. There are a lot of people who love Pathfinder 2 that I'm willing to bet would love 4th edition even more. And for as maligned as 4th edition was, I have met, and this is not a knock, This is not a knock against these people. A lot of these people are patrons of the Knights of Last Call, they are great with me, and I respect the hell out of them. But they like a very gamey role-playing game experience. And they are drawn and attracted to Pathfinder 2 because of how procedural, detailed, and explicit the rules are. There's not a lot of ambiguity in them, and they enjoy that. They don't want to make judgment calls. They don't want to be kind of having to wishy-washy things. They want something very clear and direct. They enjoy the tactical challenge of the game. I think they would love 4th edition. Maybe, 4th edition came out in 2008. Pathfinder 2 came out in 2019 or whatever. So there's been 10 years of tech that, have advanced. So I'm not saying that 4th edition probably couldn't benefit from getting cleaned up. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I do think that, I think a lot of people would play 4th edition and go, wow, that was actually really, really awesome. Again, I'm not trying to be judgmental here, but there were times when I would play 4th edition and I would go, I'm not loving this right now. This feels way too like anime-ish to me. And I don't know that I love it. Whereas there are so many people who are members of my Patreon who just go, oh dude, I love anime. It's one of our more popular channels. And again, there's just a lot of things in 4th edition, that they tried to make feel more like like a JRPG or like a Diablo, which isn't to say that it's trying to be a video game. It's just trying to emulate a certain kind of experience, that kind of super heroic, over the top kind of experience. Anyways. And again, I'm not knocking 4th edition. I love 4th edition. These are all 4th edition books that are right above me. And that's only like half the collection that I've had to rebuild because so many of my books were destroyed in a flood. Which I actually need to respond to. Question. Thanks for the reminder. When's the next night school? Ask Bob. Bob's been too busy playing in other people's games, running Northern Reaches games. Bob's over here working all the time. He's really just playing Pathfinder 2. I'm just kind of shitting on him, but yeah. Next season of Northern Reaches is just going to be 4th edition then. I mean, no, but I'm telling you, I really, William Brandis got it right. If you like PF2, you should probably try 4th edition. The problem with 4th edition is it was not released under the OGL, which D20 was. It was specifically excluded from that. It's under a different gaming license, which means you can't like retro clone it, which is why no one has ever made their own version of 4th edition the way that Pathfinder did with 3rd edition, and the way that OSE did with Basic, and the way that Black Hack and White Hack and OSRIC and all those other games. And then the second problem is because it wasn't released as part of the OGL, it's really hard to do the virtual tabletop with it, because you can get hit with intellectual property claims. So it has to be like a very generic virtual tabletop. And the only exception to this is if you bought the very limited Fantasy Grounds version, which they then shut down and you can't buy anymore, which is what Matt Colville has, which actually has like all the game mechanics and rules locked into the game. So, hey, we got a super chat. From Mr. Rick Sherman. Hey, what's going on, buddy? Rick Sherman, who says, I would subsidize and play in it if you could run a Dark Sun campaign using PF2e rules. I loved that game setting. Oh, there's a super chat alert. Big fan of Dark Sun. I think the world of Dark Sun is like all the late 90s TSR settings that just like some people say shit just ruined TSR were so good. Planescape, Dark Sun, even Birthright, like these were interesting ideas. These were, ideas that fundamentally changed the way that you played the game. And I love that. It's like with Quest for the Frozen Flame, I read that adventure, and it basically says, hey, you're in this primitive, primeval land where people live these nomadic lives. It is not, and then it goes out of its way to say, but you could be any ancestry, and you could be any class. You could be a gunslinger. You could be a champion. Even here in the middle of and it's like, just take a stand. And no setting did that better than Dark Sun. I think the setting is incredibly evocative. I think it's really great. It's really awesome. I don't know if we could ever do it, Rick, but I appreciate the super chat, but I appreciate the shout out and the belief and the vote of confidence that you would subsidize to play for a Dark Sun campaign. Maybe someday we will get there, because I think that would be a lot of fun. Now, okay, I'm not going to go. I don't want to beat this out, but using PF2e is interesting. I think you'd have to house rule a lot, because I think Pathfinder 2nd Edition is way too cuddly for Dark Sun. I think Dark Sun needs to be harsher than what Pathfinder 2nd Edition is. Treat wounds 10 minutes, 20 minutes, everybody's at full hit points is not very Dark Sunish for me. Aren't casters supposed to be powerful in Dark Sun Pathfinder 2nd Edition? So for people who don't know what Dark Sun is, I don't think I have my 2nd Edition book right here, but I think I do have my 4th Edition book. I really need to organize these books. Oh, here we go. All right. So this is the 4th Edition Dark Sun book. Come on. There it is. What's going on? There we go. And so the idea of Dark Sun, how can we sum it up? The gods are all dead. So clerics don't exist. And the world is Mad Max, but in fantasy land, because magic, sorcery, only works by drawing the energy out from the life around you. If you cast a spell, you will literally consume the life energy of everything around you. And you will literally create a circle of completely sterile, completely dead soil around you, where no life will ever grow again. And as part of the wars between the Sorcerer Kings, they just did this on an epic scale, and now the entire world is this essentially dead, barren world where the gods are dead and have abandoned the world. Psionics has flourished in the absence of the gods, and so psionics are much more common than they would be in a traditional game setting. Slavery is legal. Fights to the death, gladiator combat is common. Life is brutal and cheap. Elves are these long-limbed, desert-dwelling people. The halflings are cannibalistic killers who inhabit the very few green spots, jungle, forested spots left in the world. It's metal is almost non-existent. There's rules even in this book, and this is the 4th edition campaign setting book. And I believe in this rule book they have a rule here for and it's not like, oh, your character is special. No, you just cannot be divine. And they have equipment, and like if you roll like a nat 1 with your like bone axe or your bone spear, it like shatters, because that's why we made weapons out of metal and why it was better. And it's a tough world. It's a brutal place. So very cool. Let's see here. Question: did you see that Professor DM is making his own fantasy Heartbreaker? Isn't that Deathbringer?
Welcome to Dungeon.
Isn't that Deathbringer? No, I didn't know this. I thought he already had that, Ben. I thought Deathbringer RPG has been around for a while. But if he's like trying to push it forward more or actually turn it into like a full-fledged, I thought it was like a hack of 5th edition, but maybe he's doing a full version of it. But no, I did not know that, if he is doing that. Let's see. Yeah, Damien says the era that I was talking about, late 90s TSR, where there was like 17 published campaign settings, better than his All Forgotten Realms all the time. Someone is making an OSE port of Dark Sun, and looks like they're here. Okay. Link says, I'm from Brazil, and a publisher just launched an OSR that is retro compatible with Dark Sun. I am planning an adventure to crush the souls of the characters and players alike. Oh, all right, very cool. Do you know the name of it? We could take a look at it. That's always interesting to take a look at. I mean, Dark Sun, again, is very, very cool. Playing a fantasy game where metal is scarce like Ironsworn gets real AF. I mean, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do with Quest for the Frozen Flames, but being in Pathfinder 2 makes it tough. I mean, I will freely admit that it makes it tough. All right. Yeah, Dark Sun. I didn't know we would have so many Dark Sun fans here. Who knows? Maybe. I think it's very cool. Dark Sun is very awesome. How well does PF2e handle psionics as a spellcaster? Well, for that depends on how well the new psychic class is in Dark Archive. I saw it came out this week. I have not gotten a look at it yet. I did not enjoy the playtest version of it. I thought it was wonky and bad, but I've been told, seemingly I've read online, that it seems like they fixed a lot of those issues, so maybe it's more useful. Ultimately, truth be told, I was never the biggest fan of psionics because I just felt like it was just like another form of magic. So I never felt like it was different enough to feel different, to do something different. I don't know. So I personally have never been a huge fan of psionics or psychics in my D&D games. Flat out. Not a big fan. I don't think it's never felt different enough to me. It's never been different enough to me. It's never done anything different enough to me to feel like it doesn't do enough to like carve out its own niche and be its own thing. So just as a reminder, we're getting close to 9 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So we're probably gonna be looking to wrap up here in the next 20 to 30 minutes. So if you have any last minute tips or donations that you want to make for questions that you want to ask, now is the time to get them in. If you're watching this and you haven't signed up for the Patreon yet, what are you waiting for? I want to say though, in all true honesty, I'm just trying to get to my 200. Really appreciate everybody. We hit 5,000 subs just this last week, and again, we took the over under when we started this channel on 100, and everybody took the under on 100 subs. So are we the biggest channel on the internet? No. I'm looking at Dungeon Craft here. He's almost got 100K, which is when you get that cool button. Is this channel ever going to get to 100K subs? No. But I would rather have, 500 really cool, really dedicated, awesome, elite, specialized patrons who we can all jam with, and we can all, have a really active, lively community and kind of all be vibing on the same wavelength than 100K random strangers. Quite frankly, I think it's more fun for me. It's more interactive and better for you. And I think we're always going to just be a niche channel, but it's cool to grow. And so it's really awesome that you're here. I see new people here tonight. So thank you for stopping in, and thank you for being part of, for letting me come into your home and have a chat with you. And hopefully you found this educational. And again, I cannot stress this enough. We do this all day pretty much on our Discord. So join the Patreon if you like these conversations. Strat, there was a question by Shadram earlier on how to make PF2 encounters more interesting than bonk with brutes all day. In retrospect, I could have phrased that question summary better. I did not see that question. But long story short, even though Pathfinder 2 doesn't describe monster rolls, I think you need monster rolls. We talked about a little bit about this in our last night school episode. You need to make fights more than just, here are 3 monsters that are all exactly the same. I mean, I'll say this, just as real quick tip, guys. I'm guilty of this. So, and if I am guilty of this, it's usually because I'm running an encounter out of an AP. Don't use the same monster in a fight. Like, don't use like 3 copies of the same monster. You need variety of monsters. Otherwise, it's just going to be boring because there's no play. All the monsters are the same. You go fight monster A, monster B, monster C. They're all the same monster. There's no texture to the combat. I'll also say use terrain, use hazards, make things difficult. Again, really watch our last night school video, and I really get into it more specifically there. And I think our next night school episode, when we film it, will sort of be the part 2 of that, where we really start going into the depths of that. But yeah, take a look at our last night school episode, for sure. All right. I would love to see how our DM versus player ratio compares to other channels or Discords. Well, it was almost exclusively GMs and DMs initially. Ben is right. Northern Reachers, he says, Ben says it changed the ratio significantly. I don't think it changed the ratio significantly. I mean, I think before it was like 90-10, and it might be more like 70-30 now, I would say. There's a lot of people who, to be clear though, are GMing for the first time because of Knight's Last Call. Either they just started and that's why they joined our Patreon, or they are GMing for the first time in our Northern Reaches or community games. And that's something that I'm actually very, very proud of. So I definitely think that we're still a pretty GM heavy ratio for sure. And even if people are players, most of them I think are pretty open-minded. Don't get me wrong, there are some people who came in here because they joined the Patreon because they really like Pathfinder 2 and they want to talk about Pathfinder 2 and they want to play Pathfinder 2, and we are a great Patreon to do that as well. But I say this before and I'll say this again, even if you're enjoying the hell out of Northern Reaches, I really encourage you to look at some of these other books that we're talking about. Buy the PDF. They're not that expensive. Maybe don't buy the new Dark Archives book. I promise you don't need the 22nd and 23rd class of Pathfinder 2 when you've only played 3 or 4 so far. Maybe look at something else and check it out. Just for your own growth as a player in this hobby. Don't pigeonhole yourself. So again, there's nothing wrong with having a favorite game. There's nothing wrong with playing that favorite game, but branch out, try something different. It's part of what this Discord's about, is trying other things. All right. Strat says also 4E creature design and variability is so good, just that the bestiary provides a variety of roles for the same character suite. Yeah, I mean, I won't go into the details of it, but 4E from a game perspective just got a lot of things right. I understand that it was very not simulationist, and coming out of D&D, people were like, no, we want our simulation, even though they really didn't actually want simulation. They just thought they did. And it was very, very, it was very blunt. It was very transparent with what the game was trying to accomplish, and people didn't like that. They're like, no, we want the game to be vague and indescript and confusing and not seem like it's trying to tell us one thing, but then not giving us rules for other things, because we really want it to feel like we're trying to be all things to all people, because that's good, right? And it turns out it's not. So yeah. All right. Well, it is just about 9 o'clock, and it looks like we have answered all the questions. So I think we're going to start to wrap it up. We'll be back Thursday with our all spells ranked live stream, level 9 spells. Wow. With only one more level to go after that. And the rumor is that level 10 is going to be a free for all, or nearly free for all, with as many patrons as we can fit onto the as we can fit into the call. As we sort of go through the last couple spells there. But level 9, I don't think we have a guest for level 9. Maybe someone will hop on, but it might just be me. But we're going to cover level 9, which used to be the highest level of spells. But of course, Pathfinder 2, it goes one higher. And there's 10th level. So we're going to go through level 9 spells, and we'll probably cover some really good ones. Yeah, Boothby, it says half of level 10 is just wish variants. Agreed, which is why we're going to also kind of talk in not this week, but the next week, about spells in general and how we feel about them in Pathfinder 2, and I'll do some statistics and say, hey, look, this is the breakdown by traditions, this is the breakdown by ratings, and we can have a sort of a scientific discussion about whether we think spell design in Pathfinder 2 was a success or not. And I think we can look at that from two perspectives. Like, as a game mechanic, was the spell system successful? And then independently, were the spells that they designed for that spell system successful? And I think that those are two separate questions, both of which I think are very interesting to answer. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining us. Thanks again to Ben, to Henry, to Mr. Jason B., to Rick Sherman, for their wonderful tips. Thanks again to our patrons, our adventurers, everyone who is been supporting us on the channel and the show. Everybody who is got a green name or a blue name. Everybody who's a member of the Patreon, whether you're a squire or you're a hero, champion, or knight in between. Very specifically, you are the reason why we are still doing this. Otherwise, we would have quit a long time ago. Strat, one last thing here. Do you have the ratings on the sheet already? Yeah, I'm actually putting them together, Strat. I'll probably get them together probably after we do level 9. So I'll probably get level 9 done, and then I'll just release the whole thing, bearing in mind level 10. So Thursday, because we'll definitely get through all of level 9 on Thursday, and I'll probably do it like on Friday or something. All right, everybody. Thank you again for joining, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call.